Is that something then that you're kind of taught as a child not to really take too much of a risk?
It's quite subconscious. It's not intentional, but it was just everything is like, well, there might be potential risk or there might be potential danger, then don't do it.
It's nice to have you in the orange chair.
Thank you for having me.
Long time that we've known each other, and I thought it was only appropriate to share your story.
Thank you. It's been ages.
I know.
We've known each other for 10 years, I think. Yeah, because you were in my corner for my second bout, and that was 2014.
Is it really?
Yeah.
So before we get onto the boxing,
Okay.
Let's take it back. You're from Taiwan.
Yes.
Take me back to early life in Taiwan.
Oh. I wasn't expecting this kind of question, but okay. Yeah, so I was born in Taipei, grew up in Taipei. Quite a traditional-ish Taiwanese family, Chinese culture-wise. Got an older sister, mom and dad, but mom and dad kind of separated when I was fairly young, even though that we still lived together. So for a long time, that was kind of my norm. And I thought that was normal in a way, but now growing up, I realized that actually wasn't. But anyway, I mean, I had a fairly good childhood. Obviously, got my education there until uni. And 2004, I came to London to study my master's. Loved the city, loved the freedom, I guess. So at the time, I couldn't stay after my studies, so I had to go back home. I worked there for 3 years. And at the time, my then boyfriend was British. So he came to Taipei with me. So we lived there for 3 years and then decided to move back to London. And that was 2009 and never left. So
London was calling. What was it about London versus living at home? What were the main sort of differences? Not just in, I guess, lifestyle, but just the opportunities that it's afforded you.
You know what? It's interesting question because a lot of people ask me that. And my question is always, I guess, for some people quite puzzling because I always said that for me, living at home in Taipei was too easy. And that, I think for a lot of people, that sounds really odd. They would be like, what do you mean it's too easy? And I don't want to sound like really arrogant. It was easy for me to find a job and a well-paid job. It was an easy life. Everything was really convenient. And obviously families are there, always got the support. But I wanted more than that. And I think when I came to London, well, first to study, I realized that, well, I had to do everything on my own, right? Obviously, I've still got the sort of more support from afar, from my family and everything. And at the time, financial support as well, of course, being a student. But I realized that not everything is easy, right? And I had to do it on my own. And even just like opening a bank account. And it was a completely different culture, different way of life. And things were more difficult. And I got frustrated a lot. But at the same time, I think even just that 1 year of study, after I went home, my mom was just like,
Who is she?
Yeah, like you have grown so much just being, on your own for a year or so. And I realized that I really enjoyed that. I really actually enjoyed just making it on my own. And so, yeah, I think that's the most appeal. So you probably could have been any city, to be honest, just apart from Taipei, right? But it just happened to be London, and I just loved it. So, yeah.
It's interesting because you're not the first person to have said that, that life is easy at home or easier. Everything's pretty mapped out and it would be so easy just to fit into the norm. And I guess if you haven't seen anything else, that kind of is like, okay, well, this is what we do and you know, this is how life is. But you get to London and obviously it sounds like you were growing as a person. So you had the intellect there, you had the drive in terms of study, but it feels to me like you grew into yourself almost by being alone and having to fend for yourself.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. I didn't realize at the time, but I think now, well, 20 years on, then I guess, yeah, that was probably the beginning of me trying to find like who I really was. So yeah, it's a long journey, it's a long time. So still finding, but you know.
Just when you said then 20 years, I was like, it is that long, isn't it?
No, yeah.
It's crazy how time flies. What year did you join IBC?
I joined Islington 2012 as just recreational, doing like their boxer size classes.
You're laughing, but that's how people started. So for the people that don't know, IBC is Islington Boxing Club. So you join as a keep fitter, as we used to call it, or recreational boxer. I'm guessing you ring your mum and say, you know, I've started doing boxing. What did she think of that?
Horrified. She was like, "What? Why would you want to do that?" I think, like, to start with, obviously being like just the recreational, she didn't mind that much. I think it was when I said that, oh, I joined the competitive squad,
She's like, say
that
what?
she just went, like, why would you do that? And that's, yeah, it's very Taiwanese and I guess kind of Asian mindset that, oh, you know, it's so risky, it's so dangerous. Why would you do something so dangerous, you know, get yourself out of trouble, like out of danger kind of thing. So yeah, it was shock to not just my mom, the whole family, I guess. Yeah.
Is that something then that you're kind of taught as a child not to really take too much of a risk?
Yes, yeah, completely spot on. I think it was another thing that I'm kind of discovering for myself. It's just that growing up in the environment, just like everything's a risk. Everything's a risk assessment, right?
Wow.
If there's and it's quite subconscious. It's not intentional, but it was just everything is like, well, there might be potential risk or there might be potential danger. Then don't do it. Like, don't climb the tree because you might fall. But I haven't even tried climbing the tree. How do you know I will fall? You know, kind of thing.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Wow, that's something to unpack later on because...
Oh, hugely.
Yeah, that's phenomenal what you just said though. How do you know the outcome if I've never tried it? It's literally like, when you've put it like that, it's common sense, but I also, not trying to be disrespectful, you know, if that is the way that people have been brought up, then of course that's the way that it's kind of almost embedded into the genes, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So then you come to London, you're like, I'm free, I'm doing boxing, and your mum's like, oh, please, I don't know what I did to deserve this kid. But has she kind of, you know, seen a change in you, in just, not just your personality, but I'm wondering if there's almost an awe that you've tried things that she perhaps has never had the chance to try. Has she ever discussed that with you?
Not in that way, I guess. Well, yeah, because my mom, she was an entrepreneur herself. So she's got gut and she's got courage, right? So she probably wouldn't use her courage in things like boxing, for example, but she definitely had put her courage into doing things that's completely defying the whole sort of societal expectations and the cultural expectations, you know. And obviously in her generation, like, she got divorced, that she was separated from her husband. She started her own business and she was really successful. And I think, I don't know, I think that there's some kind of paradox there that it was okay for her to have it hard, but she wouldn't want her daughter to go through the hardship, I guess.
But also she broke the mold in a respect. So you are going to have seen that and taken some sort of inspiration from it, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. Like she's probably my biggest inspiration, really. Yeah, like starting my own business and just the support that she has given me. Yeah, it's phenomenal. I might get emotional, but
That's fine. That's fine. You know, I think it's only sometimes when we reflect on those things, our kind of eyes are open to how far we've come, but also the influences and who's really kind of supported and guided you through the ups and downs of life, to be fair.
yeah.
You are a recreational boxer and then you decide, crazy, I'm going to box. So talk me through that kind of process of your joining the carded boxers, as it's called,
Yeah.
up to your first bout.
Yeah. Oh my God, my first bout. Yeah. So I was just doing, when I first started the recreational classes, I only went like once a week. And I probably did for, I don't know, a couple of months. I loved it so much. I went twice a week, a couple of more months, 3 times a week. And then, I think a lot of people who does boxing would say it's completely addictive, right? Like you're just obsessed. And I think I remember one evening I was just training there and I saw people actual boxers sparring. And you just thought, I was just like, oh, I want to try that. I want to do that. And then when I said to my friends and stuff, they was like, why do you want to get punched in the face? Like, why do you want to do that? I said, honestly, I do not know. I just thought it was a huge challenge. And I mean, I was rubbish, right? At that time. And I just thought, I don't know. I just wanted to step in the ring and I just really wanted to give it a go. At the time, I even had the idea of just having a white collar kind of thing, like a charity boxing. But it wasn't in IBC, but I spoke to Lenny about joining the academy, which is the sort of pathway into competitive. At the time, there weren't any girls in the academy class. And then he was like, you've been here long enough. Try the competitive squad and see how you felt. And God, honestly, the first week, I have no idea what I was doing there.
Eyes wide open.
Yeah, I was like, what is going on? And I remember when we were doing the first circuit, I couldn't do a full push-up. And then so I put my knees down and the coach Bevis, he was just like, no half push-up here, put your knees up. And I was like, okay, this is for real.
This is the real deal.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I recall having a conversation with you a few years ago and that same thing of you started doing the recreational and then you told your mates and they were like, why would you? Why would you give up your weekends? Why would you give up your life? Try and explain to people that kind of, I guess it's quite difficult, but how does boxing get into your blood? How does it become addictive?
Oh.
What would you say the elements that are addictive about the sport?
I guess it's just something completely different from what I would do in my life, ever. The physical challenges and the mental challenges.
Yes.
And I think for me, I can take pain or stuff. I don't actually mind the physical side. But I think it was a revelation for me, definitely, the mental side. And obviously we talked about, the sort of environment that we grew up. And that's really when I started to realize that, oh, wait a minute, there's so much conditioning around how I was brought up and to make me become who I was then and kind of affected the things I would do as well. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. Do you think before you did boxing that you were more fearful and it kind of gave you courage in a respect? I don't know.
It's interesting because we don't know what we don't know, right? And I think if I want to draw a line between the me before boxing and the me after, is that I definitely developed a lot more self-awareness after I started boxing. And the me before boxing, obviously, I didn't know I was just going with the flow. I didn't know I was just living in the conditions that I was brought up in. I didn't know that a lot of things that I would choose to do or not do is actually because of the fear that was formed from the environment that I was brought up in. So one example, and this is one example that I sometimes said to people about how I realized that the way I was brought up really kind of shaped me. And it was actually during a sparring session. And so that sparring session, after I came out, and obviously as coaches, you give feedback to boxers, right? And I remember Bevis brought me aside, and then he said to me, he said, do you realize that you never initiated an attack during that sparring session? And I was just like, come on, of course I did. I didn't think. And then he was just like, no, you did not. You did not step on that front foot once. You were always waiting. You were on your back foot. You're going back. And you're just waiting for them to come to you and you counter. You never step that front foot forward. And I thought, really? Obviously, I trusted the coach, right? Their observation and stuff. So I think that conversation really sparked something in me to make me think about, oh, why is that? Like, why would I not take that step forward? And taking that step forward is taking risks, isn't it? Because you're exposing yourself, like, if you jab forward, yes, you're attacking, but at the same time, you're opening yourself up.
You're vulnerable, yeah?
Yeah, and then that's a risk. So I think that kind of came from there. I was just like, oh, yeah, I don't like taking risks because it's too dangerous. Why would I want to do that? I'm just going to wait for them to come. I'm not going to put myself into that position. That opened up my eyes. Honestly, I just thought, well, now I know. Then I know what I can change. And so a lot of sessions that I basically trained myself to try to be on that front foot, try to initiate attack. And I also learned that sometimes probably it's not, well, particularly in boxing, I guess, it's not about what we like, it's about what's effective, right?
100%.
So I hated to be on that front foot. I hated to sort of go forward trying to attack. But actually that it was a lot more effective for me because I'm not physically as strong as other girls. Yes. So if I keep going on my back foot, it's happy days for them, right? They keep coming at me and then I just kept feeling weaker and weaker and then being on the ropes. But if I actually took that initiative and then actually went on front foot, they would be like, oh, what's going on? And then
So, I think there was a moment when I noticed, not just in sparring, but in your fights, how you kind of changed because you are a naturally quiet person. And I think that then people can perceive you as being weak. And then obviously coupled with in the sparring sessions, you're probably more likely to be on the back foot. You're not physically as fit as as strong as the other girls, and that's okay. But I think for me, I recall you switching up and being able to be on that front foot, not just in sparring, but I remember a fight, and I was actually in the corner with Bevis, and I was very vocal, which I'm not normally that vocal, but I was very vocal because I could see what you had in you. And as soon as you started to come forward, I think people on the circuit are kind of like, who's this? Do you know what I'm saying? And you just ploughed forward. And can you remember the fight I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think it was my second fight. What was it? My second bout, I think. And I think during that bout, there's so many emotions in that second bout because, well, you would know about my first bout, I think. So I thought that it was highly unfair in my first bout. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I had a ringer in my opponent. And so I thought that was so unfair. I have trained so hard, like it's not fair.
But boxing isn't fair. And I'm not saying it's right, but once you kind of get past that thing, it's like, oh, okay, what can I do in those circumstances again? I have no, I'm not saying it's right, but I have no control over what's happening outside. But I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you being mad about that is the thing that kind of drove you on in an effect.
Yeah, it wasn't so much as anger. I think if if I could say about myself, I think I had the quiet determination of like, I'm going to show you, right? I'm just going to do it. Not so much of like proving others wrong, but so much of showing myself that, yeah, I can do this, right? Like, yeah.
There's something that I saw in you, and going back to this second fight, I think it was your second fight, and I think it was against someone against Fitzroy Lodge.
Yes, it was.
It was, wasn't it?
It was.
There was a determination in you.
Oh, thank you.
And there was something that I think it became apparent at the time, that after the fight more so, that you had a realisation of, actually, there's something in me, and if I just put my hand down and drag it out, I can do this. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yes and no. I don't think I found that out at the time. I just think that it was just something that I just felt like I had to do it. Like,
I recall at the time you were really upset that you didn't win, and again, I don't like to talk, and it's difficult sometimes, but I don't like to talk straight after somebody's fought about you shoulda, coulda, whatever. But I think at that point you hadn't realised what a step up you had just made, regardless of the result. Like I said, I saw something in you, and you kind of put your hand in and pulled out.
Yeah.
And I think that, I saw a change in you after that period, after that fight.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I think at the time that there was something, it was quite deep. It was buried really deep. And I think, yeah, probably over the years that gradually during training, during other bouts and stuff, I started to feel that, oh yes, there was something there. And probably even now, at my age now, kind of knowing that, yes, actually there is something. But I think that always deep down, I had the self-doubt, and there's a lot of kind of limiting self-belief that, for example, I'm not physically strong as other girls, or I started quite late, those kind of things, and that really kind of pulled me back a little bit. But I guess, yeah, if I wanted to say it, my strongest suit is probably really more like my heart and my determination that I'm just gonna persevere.
I thought you were going to swear then. I've never heard you swear.
No.
I was going to say, I've never heard you swear. I haven't. I don't think I've ever heard you swear.
Sometimes I do.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, sometimes.
I don't believe you. Is there any specific bout that you feel like, regardless of the outcome, all of those pieces came together?
Yeah, definitely. It's my national development semi-final, and that bout, I won the bout, which is obviously great. It was like, the icing on top. But it was really, I trained so hard for that bout, and I trained so hard for that championship, right? And it was a time that, because over the years, like kind of leading to that bout, that result never really came my way, really. And there were bouts that I thought that I thought I wanted, and I didn't get the decision, which is all kind of like what you said, so many things that in boxing is completely out of our control. And me, after being a judge and stuff, I completely understand that, the frustration that boxers could have sometimes. But leading to that bout, that I trained so hard, not just the physical side, but also the mental side, that I tried to make myself believe that I could win. And I think that was a big turning point for me, just because from previous experiences, I didn't win as many as I thought I could have. So I just got the loser's mentality, or just like, I'm just not good enough, I'm going to lose anyway. So I really worked really hard on that. I read loads of books about mindset. I read loads of books about, champions mindset, athletes, and I'm a very visual learner. So I wrote down every single thing that I did each day, like the training wise, that, the runs, the sparring, the strength conditioning and everything. And just to tell myself that, yeah, you have worked really hard. Like these are the things that you're doing. I try visualization, like before going to bed, and loads of things. And on the day, warming up, I even had the courage. I thought it's such a small thing, but I thought it was really funny. So when I was warming up, and Jerry and JR, they were going to be in my corner, and then so Jerry was like watching me and stuff. And then I said to Jerry, because like they had a spray bottle.
Yeah.
I hated it so much. Some people liked it, but I hated it. I never dared to tell them or to tell the coaches, like, please don't do that on me. But that day, when I was warming up, I remember I turned to Jerry, I said, could you please not use the spray bottle? And then he was like, yeah.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, Jerry was just like, oh, okay. You don't like it? I was like, no, I hated it. Like, don't do it. And then he was like, okay. And I actually surprised myself. I was like, where do I get that,
Wow,
to tell Jerry? So, yeah, I felt good that day, I honestly feel ready. And at the time also, I just thought, I don't actually care about the result anymore. Like, I feel good. Like, this is my day. And I remember just waiting to get into the ring. And I realized that my opponent, the other girl, was standing in front of me. And she looked so nervous. And I just thought, I got this, And I actually even made a joke because they were doing something in the ring that I was going to get into. So there was a delay. And I remember the girl standing in front of me with her coaches. And I was just kind of like, I forgot what I said, but I kind of like made a joke. And then the coach kind of looked at me and laughed. And then the girl just looked so nervous. And I just thought, I got this. And yeah.
So just even me hearing you talk about just like even the joy of telling that story and your whole demeanour changed, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it must have been, and for people that don't know Jerry, I mean, listen, I don't know where you've been, but Jerry is blunt. Let's put it that way. He's very blunt. He's completely the opposite. He's quite an autocratic coach, isn't he? And he definitely has a different personality to you, and I guess some people could be scared of him. But I've had an experience with him when you put him in his place, and I don't mean disrespectfully because I don't think that's why he's given so much to the game and he's older than us. He kind of goes, oh, okay. He kind of gives you a little bit of respect back, doesn't he?
Yeah, I love Jerry. I think he's got a very kind of
good heart.
He's got a lovely heart and a really soft heart. But the facade give you like he's really hardcore and he's like mean. But I think he just put it on. I think.
Listen, he's a good guy and he's given so much to the sport. As has JR, obviously. I think they're way past 30 odd years, which, I totally respect. You made that transition from boxer to official. Was that kind of a way of still keeping your foot in the door with boxing? Did you know you were kind of thinking about retiring from the competitive side, or what kind of drew you to being an official?
Yeah, so I think when I was boxing, I was helping out a lot of home shows. So I was like doing the recording at ringside, and then it was like, one of the better views of boxing, right? And when I was helping out, and I always appreciated like the supervisors. So for example, Tracy Murphy from Finchley, she would always kind of like ask me, oh, what do you think about this round? And I think that kind of started me off kind of like really watching the bout in a different way, not just as a boxer, and learn a lot. And obviously at the time I always thought that, maybe being a judge, like knowing what the judge are looking for, then I get tips from, and it will help me. Being a boxer, maybe I could actually win at one time, right?
To be fair, everybody thinks that way, because even as a coach, you think, if I can think, that's why I became a judge.
Right.
If I can see what they're looking for, then I can coach my, you know, I can better inform my boxers. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no. And so that's how I started, well, as a judge, because that's how we start, right? You have to be a judge first. And it's actually, being a referee is kind of quite similar of me joining the competitive squad in the club. I was just watching them. I just thought, you know what? I want to be a referee. I want to be in there.
Because it's not traditional, is it?
It's not.
It's not the traditional way of you start. Most women, and again, I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing, but most women, they take the judge's qualification and they stay there and then they work through their levels.
Yeah.
Amy, no, she said, I'm going to challenge myself.
Yeah, and it's just really, I guess it's kind of strange for some people. It's not a grand reason. Like, some people just like, what made you want to be a referee? And I was just like, I don't know. I just saw it and I kind of wanted to be it. And I just thought, that's quite cool. That's pretty cool.
It is,
you know? And then so after being a judge for a while, and then I was able to get upgraded, and that's when in England boxing they said that, well, you can choose to be a supervisor or a referee, and I always set my mind that I want to be a referee, and so that's how I started my journey as a referee.
It did surprise me that you chose to be a ref over being a judge, because the hostility that sometimes, I mean, judges get hostility, but referees, they really do get hostility. But also in terms of you being a woman and perhaps, you know, reffing a male bout, did you see, or have you had any different experiences reffing a female bout versus a men's bout?
Yeah. I'll come back to that question, because what you said, that when you said that it surprised you, it actually kind of made me reflect on, it is actually quite surprising for me, because I don't like to be seen. And that kind of just, you know, like you said, I'm usually quiet. If I'm in a gym or something, I keep my head down and I just do the work and stuff. I don't necessarily like to attract attention, but being the referee, you're being seen, and so that's quite interesting. I don't know why. So, but yeah,
that's the reason why I didn't do it.
Yeah,
believe that or not,
okay.
That is the reason why because you are literally centre of attention in some respects. Does it still make you feel uncomfortable?
That's a funny thing, because I don't feel uncomfortable being in the ring.
Yeah,
and I think. As a referee, I mean. And I think it's because that I always, and to this day, I always have the mindset that, well, it's about the boxers, and I technically should be invisible in the ring anyway. I don't need to get involved. I don't need to be seen unless I have to.
But just by the very nature of you being in the ring and it being on telly, but I think that's probably a healthy way of looking at it, because I think if you thought about how many homes that your image is in.
Right, never really thought about that. Thank you for putting that in my head now.
I'm sorry, but it's true. But it is but going back to what you said, I think it's very healthy the way that you've, because it's true, it's not actually about you, but the fact that you're able to just get on with your job. I'm guessing when you're in the ring, you're just focusing on the action, and whatever else is going on outside is none of your business.
No, not really. No. Once a friend who's not in boxing asked me, he was like, so you know, when there are cameras around, do you work with the cameras or do they follow you? And and I just thought, I don't care about the cameras.
No, they're literally not even secondary, are they? The boxes are
not at all. I was like, I don't care where they are. Like,
so he thinks that you moved to get into the, oh, bless him.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then so that's, that's quite funny.
You start on the amateur scene with the refereeing, and you've recently become a professional referee, And haven't you made history with regard to the whole official thing?
Yes.
You see,
Yes, I have. Yeah, I need to own it. That's what people keep telling me. Yes. In March last year, 2024, so I stepped into the ring in York Hall as a professional referee, and became the first female boxing referee in the UK. Yeah.
that is brilliant. Because you know what? Up until I read that or saw it, I thought there'd already been one.
Not professionally in the UK.
And then what I noticed recently, there are a lot more females now on the scene. So you're obviously the trailblazer.
Oh, thank you.
Did you see any sort of, I know obviously rules, etc., but did you kind of, what am I trying to say? Did you see or experience much differences? Did you feel kind of nervous, even though you'd had that experience being in the amateur scene?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think the difference that I feel is probably more in the build-up. So for example, me being outside of the ring in the amateurs or in the professional boxing show, obviously the atmosphere is very different. The crowd is very different, the spectators. But once I get into the ring, at the end of the day, it's two boxers boxing. And obviously there are different things. Yeah, because amateur boxing, you would know, is a lot cleaner. It's more technical and more skills. Well, sorry, not skills in that sense, but, it's cleaner. I have been learning about professional boxing in terms of the little tricks, for example, that boxers would do. But I think I always get nervous anyway. Like the nerves are always there. It's funny that people always say, oh, you always look so calm in the ring. I was just like, no.
If you knew what was going on.
Yeah, it's just like, no, hide it really well. I always get nervous, but I believe that those nerves are good for me, that I need to be nervous. And it just shows I care, and then really get me more alert as well, that I want to be able to see every punches or every little things that happen in the ring. So nerves are good, and I work with those nerves. So, yeah.
Do you think that it's harder? You talked about cleaner punches in the amateur boxing, although I think it's slightly going the other way over the last few years. I think some of the kids are boxing like pros. Not saying that's a bad or a good thing, but is it easier to see the amateurs fighting versus the pros? Is it easier to score, should I say?
Oh, that's a very good question. Easier to score. I wouldn't say easy or easier in the sense, but I guess like in amateur boxing, clean punches are scoring punches. Obviously, it's the same for professional boxing, but a lot of times that you don't get clean punches in professional boxing. So you almost have to look for something else. So I guess...
The next layer.
Yeah. So I guess that even though the sort of basic scoring criteria is the same, but in professional boxing, you look for more, I think.
And when you talk about looking for more, because I kind of really... I think a lot of referees and judges get a hard time in the professional scene. Yeah, when you talk about this kind of, you need to see more, do you think this is sometimes where the controversy happens in professional boxing in particular, where a judge or a referee can see it one way, yet somebody else could see it another way? And what I mean by that is, like, for example, some people might prefer someone that's a counter puncher versus someone who's leading off. We got, obviously, I mean, we won't get too deep into it, but, you know, a fighter will come out and go, I was robbed, and then this one's saying, actually, it wasn't, you know, it was a close fight, but it wasn't a robbery. We see that a lot more, I think, in professional boxing. But do you see that that's kind of where this thing comes from?
To start with, boxing judges or judging a boxing fight or a bout, it is subjective, right? So when you have the human element in it, then everybody's got different point of view. Everybody's got, and also that we sit in different side of the ring as well. And even as a referee, being in the ring, sometimes there are some angles that we're probably not going to be able to see very clearly. So I think that there are a lot of factors in it that maybe, you know, people in front of the TV or people sitting away from the ring cannot actually appreciate.
It's a completely different view, isn't it?
Completely. Like sometimes when I watch a fight or a bout on TV, and because it's flat, it's only one dimensional, and you can only see what the camera shows you, right? So if you're actually live there and then you're at a different angle, then you see different things.
Even if you were at ringside on a table watching versus maybe the first row, again, it's different, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so yeah, it is subjective. And I guess when I was saying that you kind of look for more, then it's really you look for more, well, the skills, for example, the techniques. You look, well, in amateurs, for example, if it's a really close bout, then you look for the heart, like whether the boxers dominating the tempo, the rhythm of the bout, or they making that fight. So yeah, when it's really close, you need to look for some little edge and to determine who wins that round.
I always say that I think that people shouldn't comment. That's just a thing that I've got. People shouldn't comment on boxing or the rules of boxing until they've at least read the rule book. Do you know what I mean? And then on top of that, to understand that it is much more complex than people give it credit for.
Yeah.
Like we've said, there's different angles. Literally, some people can think one way when they watch a fight, and then the next day they'll go back and watch it again. And I think you can be swayed by, and that's why I generally turn down commentary. You can be swayed, but you can even as a judge. I used to put not headphones, I used to put earplugs in because you can get swayed by someone cheering in the background, going shot when it hasn't even landed.
That, you know what, like in amateur boxing, and I'm not going to name any names, but when I was doing my course and as a coach, and they actually kind of hinted that, well, you can play on judges' mind, like just like you said, calling shot. And like you, a lot of time I'm just like, what shot? Like,
But also, what's funny about it,
away.
even when you go, what shot? I think there's could
the
be
doubt as well.
The tendency for doubt, like, oh, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was because I didn't see that shot. But I think you have to. I used to put, and people used to laugh at that. I used to put my little earplugs in, and it was just a cleaner, clearer vision by getting rid of all that noise. And I don't necessarily just mean crowd noise. I mean noise of these coaches. So they've obviously cottoned on that.
Playing on your mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I want to know who that is now. You can tell me after. But you then made the decision to leave the amateurs, and then you're now just going to be a referee in the professional scene. What prompted that decision?
It really all happened quite naturally. In the sense, I think, for me, it's the beauty about it that I never kind of force it to happen. But so this was back in 2023, I think. An ex-professional referee and also amateur referee, Chaz.
I knew it was.
Yes, yeah. So
I see him all the time on the circuit.
Yeah. So Chaz is an inspector now, but Chaz messaged me and say, BBBOC, they're recruiting for referees. Are you interested? And that kind of threw me a little bit because at the time I was grade A, like national grade amateur referee for England boxing. And I think that I was kind of like in a good sort of position to get like an international A star, 1 star or something. So I was actually progressing quite well. And that was kind of at the time my goal. I wanted to go to the Olympics. I wanted to get that 3 stars and stuff. So when Chaz asked me the question, I thought, oh,
which road do I take?
yeah. And at the time, naively, I thought I could do both. And so I went for the recruitment for the professional boxing referee. And so there were like interviews and stuff like that, a different sort of process. And then I realized that at one point that I would need to choose. And if I'm being really honest, I hesitated a little bit. And I think this is where the fear came in that, oh, like I'm going to be seen and, I'm going to be the first one. And I just felt there would be a lot of criticism, there would be a lot of judgment and, and I just thought, well, maybe not, maybe I can wait.
But also, so what?
Well, yeah, and then, and I think like what kind of changed was the thought of, well, first sort of going back, like when I was first started watching professional boxing and stuff, and what really bugged me was there are more and more female boxers, but there are no female referees in the ring, and you hardly see any, right? Like even in the States, there's only one. I think in Europe, there's 1 or 2, but you hardly see them on TV. And then that used to bug me. When that message came from Chaz, and then he would just like, oh, I think that you'd be really good. Like, do you want to give it a go? Then I thought, well, why not me? Like, if there's none out there, like, why not me? So I went through the process and obviously got recruited and started the trial period. And at the moment, I'm still going through the trial as well. Obviously, the first year was scoring at ringside. And at that time, because I wasn't seen in the ring, so I could do the amateur at that time. But when it was decided that I would be put up into the ring, then I had to take that decision. And I just thought, I'm going to give the new challenge a go. And sad as it was, it really made me feel sad that I have to sort of give up the amateurs. But it's, you kind of move on in that sense, I guess.
Yeah, but also it's a decision for you, because I do feel like when you are an amateur coach or an amateur official, it's about everybody else and helping everybody else. And I'm not saying that you don't get anything out of it, any personal satisfaction. But I think you end up doing everything for the benefit of everybody else.
Right.
And then I guess once you have decided this challenge is for me and me only, even me leaving the amateurs, I definitely saw a difference in the way that people behaved towards me, because I'd given a lot of years and they're used to you being in that position, almost a submissive position of helping other people. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad position to be in, but again, I think when you decide to do something for yourself, you do kind of see, or in my experience, I definitely, and it was a hard thing to leave. But do you feel like, and again, this might not be something you can answer, but I just noticed a change in the amateur game from when I was boxing, and definitely people were a little bit more respectful and towards their coaches. They didn't have this sense of entitlement that I think happens nowadays. I just think the game has changed very slightly, and I think that's possibly why people walk away from the sport.
Don't know, actually. I wouldn't be able to, wouldn't really be able to comment on that, because I don't really go into amateur gyms that much anymore. So I guess in that sense that I've kind of lost touch for a year now, really not being on the amateur scene. Well, hopefully not. I think hopefully boxers still really sort of respects their coaches and officials, because like you said that, they are all volunteers, and then I spend so much time. Like I know so many people that actually plan their holidays around championships and stuff, you know.
Not just holidays. A lot of people turn down work. I think it's a generational thing. We would never have spoken back to our coaches. I see a lot more people of my generation of boxer who has given back to their club or to the sport. I don't see it happening as often now. Most people want to take their skill set and use it to earn money, and I'm not saying that that's wrong either, but it would be nice sometimes to see people give back to the sport. But yeah, I think the game's changed. It's still obviously it's still a great game. What else didn't you end up being on the committee or something at
Yeah, so so I was on the England Boxing Board as a director for a while, I think 9 or 10 months. And I'm still currently sitting on their EDI subcommittee.
So you can't slag them off?
No, it's not that. Like I still hold them accountable. You know, if there are things that I don't necessarily agree with, or there are things that I could help with. So, for example, before I became the professional boxing referee, that I was doing like 2 cohorts of the female officials development program. So really just help encouraging female to become an official, to step into the ring as a referee or to be a supervisor, and just really to provide, I think, to encourage them, to let them know that there's a different pathway. And kind of like what you said about boxers now, they don't always have to be a coach, you know, that they can be an official.
Especially if they don't want to give, because let's be fair, to become a coach, an amateur coach, you're probably given about 30 hours plus a week. People don't know how much time and effort goes into, it's not just the training sessions. If you go into competitions, especially at the weekend, those days can be 10 hours, 12 hours plus, right?
Yeah.
Driving there, you know, getting people weighed in, etc. It's a lot. And that's time away from friends and family. And of course it's a choice, but if they wanted to stay in the sport but not commit as much time, being an official, I think, is a better route than being a coach.
Well, you said that, but actually as an official, you spend a lot of time as well, also on the weekend, because when you go to those shows, especially the supervisors, they get there ahead of you, right? Like they need to weigh in the boxes, so they have to get there a lot earlier to set everything up, to set the scale up. And they have to be the last to leave, and they have to submit the results and, you know, everything. So actually, as a supervisor, and I respect them so much because they spend loads of times with their equipment and everything. And yeah, for boxers and coaches, you can go to a show. If you're lucky enough that you're the first half of the bout or the show, then you can leave after. But officials, can.
But what? Yeah, true. But what if you like? There's often where you get to the gym at 7 o'clock, and then you drive somewhere, and then you get there and they weigh in. Then there's a break in between while you're waiting for the bouts to start. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate that officials also have a lot to do. I just think it's slightly less hours, maybe not the OIC level.
No, not the supervisor.
Yeah,
but no, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I think it's different, definitely different kind of responsibilities, and then different time commitment. Yeah, different commitment in general, actually. Yeah.
2024 Olympics.
Yes.
Taiwan won their first gold medal.
Yeah.
Ling Yuting.
Yeah.
Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah.
She won a gold medal in the 57 kilogram division. How was the win received and celebrated in Taiwan?
We loved it. And the whole Taiwan was so proud of her. And obviously there's a controversy behind that, you know, her eligibility and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I mean, obviously I can only see from what the media has reported, or, you know, like either the sort of Western media or the Taiwanese media. From the Taiwan point of view, is that she was eligible to compete. She worked really hard. She had been in these kind of world level championships for years. So it's a testament of her perseverance, her hard work, and she got there in the end. So yeah, we're really proud of her.
Especially under those circumstances. I do think she I think Aman Khalif bore most of the kind of brunt of the controversy. And for people that don't know, the reason why Ling Yuting was a controversial figure in the female category at Paris 2024 is because it was alleged that her testosterone levels align more typically with a male than a female's, and the same for Iman Khalif. But you quite rightly pointed out that she had for many years been competing in the female category at world level. So this was not like a shock, a surprise, maybe for the outside world, I mean outside of boxing, but everybody knew that she, knew of her and Khalif. Just in terms of, what you do for a living in terms of the mindset work and stuff, how is somebody able to compete at that top level going through, because she must have been aware of what was going on. I was really intrigued with both of them, how they managed to handle all of that stuff, all of that noise, and still perform.
Yeah, it's obviously I'm not them, so I cannot really speak for them. But I would think that a lot of self-belief would probably be one of the key elements in their mindset, and believe in their work. And I think that support network is really important as well. I would imagine they probably have a very good support network just to, just stabilize them, keep them grounded, and just keep them, keep their work ethic. And I guess knowing why they're there, like,
or reminding
the purpose.
them.
Yeah.
Have you seen an uptake in the sport of boxing since she's kind of, because you went home, didn't you, recently? Have you seen kind of any of her influence in the on the boxing scene? You know what?
Box fit or boxercise is really popular at the moment in Taiwan. Honestly, like even the area where I grew up, there are some really sort of small studio gym. They always promote like, your box fit or what they call boxing cardio or cardio boxing or something. Yeah, so it is popular.
But we both laughed, but that could be the springboard, because you started off as a recreational boxer.
Yeah,
do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so definitely.
And in fact, many women started off in the amateur scene I'm talking about as recreational boxers. So, and they always think, I'll have one and then that'll do me. And then after it's like, actually, so it could be the Yuting effect. It could be the Yuting effect.
Right.
That's what they called after the 2 gold medals of the Adams effect. Effectively, all the girls coming into the sport via her. So that's good to hear that people are kind of inspired by.
Yeah. One thing I want to add, though, and it might sound a bit like a criticism for my own country, but it's really more in terms of the environment you sort of brought up in, is that if you're not good at it, they don't actively encourage you to continue. Yeah, so, obviously, like if you want to get to that world level and stuff, like you go through the selection process.
So is that something that they need to learn? Sometimes you're not always going to win, but then if you stick at a sport and you commit and you go on this, but you know what I'm saying? Because how would you know? How would you know?
Yeah. And I think like probably just from my own personal experience that if I were still in Taipei, for example, I probably would have never taken up boxing because I do not and did not have that attributes to be a boxer because just by looking at me, they're just like, you can do a boxer size.
There's the door.
Yeah, have fun, like, whatever. And, off you go. Like, I don't think I would have ever competed.
Do they know about you at home, though? Do they know how about your progress, because you are trailblazing, and surely you're someone to look up to.
You mean, is it in the media or like my family knows, but but not in the...
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe someone will see this. Maybe.
Maybe.
And yeah. Finally, what mantras do you like to live by?
That really put me on the spot.
We're getting deep today.
Yes. You know what? I have different ones. Like over the years, that sort of different kind of phase in my life, I have got different ones. At this moment in time in my life, just be kind, be compassionate to others and to myself. And for me, kind of is what I'm trying to live by each day. And I actually think that's what a lot of women are lack of, just being kind and compassionate to themselves. Because we're so self-critical. We can be so kind to others, but we're so self-critical. We're always not enough. We're always not doing enough. We're not being enough. But we are doing the best we can at the place and circumstances that we're in. And I think that's what really counts. And then we don't give ourselves enough credit. And so at the moment, I'm learning that and telling myself that.